Greetings. My name is Egon Cholakian. I had warned that the summer mega earthquake in Kamchatka was merely the beginning of unfolding magmatic processes deep within the Earth. September confirmed these forecasts. A series of powerful earthquakes in the Kamchatka region has left the scientific community bewildered. Once again, we witness the scientific incompetence and sheer folly of those who dare to call themselves scientists in Russia. What has occurred in Kamchatka over the past months proves yet again that those who ought to warn of impending disasters are either inept or deliberately concealing the truth from the public. Instead of heeding the warnings that ALLATRA issued long before the July earthquake in Kamchatka, they chose to vilify those who spoke the truth. And now, as their so-called scientific forecast collapsed before our eyes, they attempt to pass off their ignorance as the uniqueness of natural processes. Let me remind you that at the end of July 2025, off the coast of Kamchatka, a mega earthquake of magnitude 8.8 struck. This seismic event was the most powerful in the region in the past 73 years. I covered this historic event in one of my earlier addresses and noted that ALLATRA scientists had warned of increasing seismic activity in the Kuril-Kamchatka region due to the influence of the Siberian magma plume in the report entitled "On the Threat of a Magma Plume Eruption in Siberia and Strategies for Addressing the Issue." Moreover, Mr. Igor Danilov, an eminent scientist representing the ALLATRA team of researchers, accurately forecast the emergence of the Kamchatka mega earthquake a month and a half before the event itself. According to our model, this earthquake was not triggered by ordinary tectonic processes, but by the pressure exerted on the plate by the Siberian plume, a colossal magmatic structure that even now is eroding the base of the lithospheric plate beneath Siberia. Should the contemporary Siberian plume break through, the probable consequences would place the survival of all humanity in jeopardy. I have already devoted numerous videos to this immense magmatic threat, so I will not dwell on it in detail today. I will remind you only that for publicly voicing information about the threat of a Siberian plume breakthrough, ALLATRA was declared an extremist organization in Russia in June of 2025. Instead of heeding our forecast, instead of listening to our attempts to warn about looming disasters, the Russian authorities silenced us. Yet the unfolding events in Kamchatka continued to validate our forecast, and now the entire world can see it. What so profoundly shocked the scientific community were the aftershocks of magnitude 7.4 and 7.8 that struck Kamchatka in September, following the historic mega earthquake in July. The point is this: after powerful earthquakes, aftershock activity always continues for a considerable period. According to the classical laws of seismology, the frequency of aftershocks should decline over time, in accordance with the Amori-Utsu law. While strong aftershocks can indeed occur, the Bath law establishes that the largest aftershock is usually about 1.2 magnitudes weaker than the main event. Let us look at the chart of seismic activity in the Kuril-Kamchatka region following the historic mega earthquake of July 2025. Indeed, during the first month, aftershock activity in Kamchatka began to subside. At the end of August, Danila Chebrov, director of the Kamchatka branch of the Geophysical Service of the Russian Academy of Sciences, reported that more than 12,000 earthquakes had already occurred since the main event. He stated that aftershock activity had significantly diminished and was unfolding as expected, and that they saw nothing unusual in this trend. Yet, on September 13th, off the coast of Kamchatka, a sudden earthquake of magnitude 7.4 struck, once again strongly felt in Petropavlovsk, Kamchatka. This event was still explained by the Bath law, meaning it did not exceed the 1.2 magnitude threshold relative to the main shock. Russian seismologists, disregarding my warning, declared it would be the major aftershock they had supposedly anticipated. But here an apparent paradox arose. Typically, the most significant aftershocks occur within the first days or weeks, not merely 2 months after the main event. Then only 6 days later, an even more unexpected seismic event unfolded. On September 19th, in the same zone, an earthquake of magnitude 7.8 was recorded. Following this quake, Shimovich volcano ejected a column of ash to an altitude of 4.5 kilometers. In the homes of Petropavlovsk, Kamchatka, lamps swayed, doors slammed, and furniture shook. Cracks appeared in walls and ceilings, and people fled in panic into the streets. Large fissures opened in kindergartens and schools in Petropavlovsk, Kamchatka. In just one day, 47 tremors of magnitude greater than 3.5 were recorded, more than half of them reaching magnitude 5 and above. A tsunami threat was declared with waves of up to 1.5 meters. In other words, nearly 2 months after the main earthquake, aftershock activity began to rise again, as you can see on the chart. Moreover, each subsequent strong event exceeded the previous one. This completely contradicts the established laws governing aftershock sequences. This glaring contradiction was hastily commented on by Yuri Vinogradov, director of the Unified Geophysical Service of the Russian Academy of Sciences, whose questionable competence I have already addressed in my earlier videos. I quote Vinogradov verbatim. There are 3 principal laws that describe how an aftershock sequence develops: the Bath law, the Anomaly law, and the productivity law. They were formulated at different times, but so far not one of them applies to this earthquake. Therefore, a new law will have to be invented. The point is that any such powerful earthquake is unique, so there are no statistics on them. All seismologists believed that the aftershock which occurred on September 13th was indeed the strongest one, as required by the laws of seismology. It is usually 1.2 magnitudes weaker than the main shock. Yet a stronger one appeared. Nevertheless, at present, no serious danger of intensifying seismic activity in Kamchatka is anticipated. In other words, the main shock of magnitude 8.8 has already taken place and has produced all the maximum possible consequences in Kamchatka. End of quote. In Vinogradov's words, an obvious contradiction emerges, though as always, it does not trouble him in the least. On one hand, he admits that all existing laws of seismology fail to apply to this situation, and that he cannot explain the event. Yet on the other hand, he asserts that no serious danger of intensifying seismic activity is anticipated. The most valuable lesson in Vinogradov's remarks is a masterclass in ignoring logic and common sense. For any rational person, a logical question must arise. If the classical laws do not hold, and the aftershocks defy every known pattern, then on what basis can one confidently claim there is no danger of further intensification? Vinogradov's remarkable talent for evasiveness lies in his ability to call unique those very events that were predicted in detail a month and a half before they actually occurred. A thoroughly foreseeable manifestation of pressure from the Siberian mantle plume on the plate, which we had warned about in advance, is now portrayed as a unique and unexpected occurrence. One that, we are told, requires concocting, I emphasize concocting, new laws to describe it. What astounding logic. Instead of trying to understand what is actually happening, Russian scientists instead, like Vinogradov, prefer to concoct new laws and to declare events unique. Egotism and science are fundamentally incompatible. A true scientist seeks truth, not ways to save face in the midst of his own incompetence. Vinogradov proposes concocting a new law, yet at the same time he deliberately ignores the facts and the information regarding the influence of the Siberian magma plume on tectonic processes in Russia. In such a case, does Yuri Vinogradov have the right to speak on behalf of all seismologists? The question is rhetorical. He says all seismologists thought. What does all mean? I wonder if that is an official statistic or if we simply take Vinogradov's word for it. Which seismologist is he talking about? Evidently, in his view, it must be some other scientist, but certainly not himself. And here perhaps I would agree with Vinogradov. He cannot be counted among those worthy of that title. What kind of scientist is he? He is as much a scientist as my slipper is. If I walk in slippers, that does not mean my scientific competence transfers to them. Looking at Vinogradov, one comes to a sobering conclusion. Academic titles in Russia possess a peculiar quality. They can flourish in complete independence from the intellectual abilities of their holders. But genuine science is not made by those adorned with regalia. It is made by those capable of thought. And if you, colleagues, still do not understand what is happening, let me explain it once more. The rise in seismic activity in Kamchatka is linked directly to the activation of the Siberian mantle plume. What does Vinogradov's phrase mean? That the situation does not fit into any existing law. Perhaps it simply means that Vinogradov does not know the law, owing to his own incompetence. The earthquakes of magnitude 7.4 and magnitude 7.8 occurring only 6 days apart were neither a coincidence nor ordinary aftershocks. They are a consistent manifestation of a deep-seated process. Alatra scientists spoke about this as early as 2014. We spoke about it again a year before and on the eve of the historic earthquake in Kamchatka. Precisely what my esteemed colleague Igor Danilov had forecast came to pass, namely a powerful seismic event at the end of July or in the first days of August in the specified region. And we stated that this would not be the last. Strong earthquakes would continue because they are the result of profound processes that Russian scientists, in the service of private capital, entirely fail to understand or choose not to understand. By persistently ignoring these realities, they misled millions of people in Russia, particularly those who live and work directly above the plume. Among them is Norilsk, which is quite literally collapsing before our eyes. When we speak of the threat of the Siberian plume breakthrough, we are not trying to frighten anyone. We are stating facts. Allow me to explain the mechanism at work. The Siberian plume continues to erode the plate from below, and as a result of this process, gases accumulate between the mantle and the Earth's crust. The central problem lies precisely in these gases, which build up in the space between the mantle and the crust. That is the entirety of the so-called mysterious process, which allegedly does not fit into the laws. It is precisely for this reason that the seismicity has not subsided to this day. But soon everything will change, and not for the better for Russia. As for the detailed mechanism of gas formation beneath the plate, on that subject I will say absolutely nothing further today, because people like Vinogradov simply do not deserve it. If you don't understand why seismic activity is intensifying, you could simply ask us. But no, the Russian scientists prefer to display an astonishing mentality. Let the entire country collapse as long as we stand our ground. However, this stance is not accidental. It is the result of a deliberate campaign to discredit inconvenient scientific data under the direction of Racier's President Dvorkin and the FSB. Once again, let me warn you, Russians, it is time to stop cultivating and promoting the Nazism instigated by Dvorkin, because it will lead not only to the degradation of Russian science, as you can plainly see, but could also end in the destruction of the entire planet. As an expert in the Arctic region and national security, I speak from authority on this matter. If you truly consider yourself scientists, you must stand for truth and reality, not for the suppression of facts. If we were honestly giving data on the condition of the Siberian region in terms of climatic and geodynamic anomalies, we could work constructively to prevent a global planetary catastrophe. But it seems we are dealing with clinical idiots. Pardon the offense. You act as though you do not hear us, although I personally know perfectly well that you are following my addresses. As early as the beginning of September 2023, Mr. Igor Danilov, an Alatra scientist, the one you persecute more than anyone else, the one whose life has been the target of multiple assassination attempts, warned you in plain terms about the inadmissibility of the course you had chosen. He stated openly that what you were doing was a grave mistake, and he clearly set forth what would happen next and why. What more did you need in order to hear it? Instead of engaging in constructive dialogue, you intensified the terror to its maximum. Just a few months after these warnings by Mr. Igor Danilov, a large-scale campaign of persecution and raids was launched against him and Alatra volunteers, carried out by members of the Russian Association of Centers for Religious and Sex Studies, or Racers, through FSB agents operating in Ukraine. A pressing question arises. How do FSB operatives and the decayed structure of Racers coordinate all of this? And why does the leadership of Ukraine allow it? How is such a thing even possible? The oligarchic structures within Russia's government, intent on protecting their profits from Siberian mineral extraction, unleashed Racers against Alatra and suppressed critically important information about the need for controlled degassing of the Siberian plume as early as 2014. Instead of pursuing a scientific approach, they waged a campaign of persecution against the researchers. They cut off access to the data, leaving no possibility to track or analyze the indicators of the plume's growing magmatic activity, even though precisely this data could have enabled forecasting and mitigation of the damage. On top of that, the Russian population has been stripped of access to a free internet. VPNs have been blocked, censorship imposed, and independent sources of information curtailed. All constitutional freedoms in the country have been trampled. And for what? To prevent critical scientific data from reaching the public. To ensure people remain ignorant of the real threats. Another publicity stunt lays bare the sheer cynicism of this clique of degenerates toward the Russian people. It turns out that Russia is planning to lure people into Siberia, resettling compatriots from abroad in order to stabilize the population of the Siberian Federal District. To Siberia, where the coming years the most powerful magmatic activity may erupt, where seismic activity will only intensify, where climatic conditions will become extreme, they intend to resettle people. Apparently, someone is very eager to boost future statistics on disaster victims. Particularly vile are the plans to balance the regional labor market in light of current and projected workforce needs. What workforce needs could there possibly be in a region on the verge of massive geological upheaval? Perhaps only in rescue services in morgues. Imagine this. Instead of preparing to evacuate the population from potentially hazardous zones, they plan to drive even more people there. The Ministry of Internal Affairs, the Ministry of Health, and the Ministry of Labor have been designated as responsible. One wonders, who will take responsibility for the consequences when everything goes awry? And here we have another group of so-called geniuses of strategy who want to offer Russians a Siberian dream. Professors from the National Research University Higher School of Economics have drafted a report titled Turn to the East 2.0, in which they call for mass resettlement of Russians into Siberia, directly into the zone of activation of the Siberian plume. Their slogan is especially inspiring. Why do we need the moon when we have Siberia? Indeed, why should humanity need backup planets when you can just herd everyone into Siberia? Think about it. Why are they doing this? In defiance of Alatra and our forecast, they intend to drive you into Siberia. It is nothing less than a mockery of common sense. The Nazis who have seized power in your country revel in their dominion over you, even as catastrophes are already tearing your nation apart. You yourselves can see that the rise in catastrophic events is occurring not only in Kamchatka. Take, for example, the winter of 2024 through 2025 across European Russia, the Urals and Western Siberia. It was anomaly warm. The 2025 fire season began abnormally early and was marked by an explosive increase in the area burned. By mid-May, the burned area reached roughly 2 million hectare-acres, about 4.94 million acres, which is 2.5 times higher than the value for the same period in 2024. In Krasnoyarsk Krai, by mid-year, the burned area had grown by nearly 1.5 times compared with 2024. On June 28th, a magnitude 5.1 earthquake occurred in Yakutia at a depth of only 10 kilometers. Notably, international agencies recorded it, while the Russian federal media did nothing to utter a single word. A classic example of the suppression of critically important information. In Norilsk, 2 large ground collapses occurred within just a few months. In April, a sinkhole measuring 500 square meters and 7 meters deep formed, and on June 28th, a pit 132 square meters in area and 25 meters deep swallowed garages and a person. These collapses point to permafrost thawing from below, driven by the geothermal heat of the magma plume. There are thousands of such examples of catastrophes, yet the statistics are artificially understated, and news reports deliberately omit them to conceal the complete picture of what is unfolding. Recently, seismic activity across all of Russia has increased. Floods, fires, storms, hurricanes, and anomalous weather phenomena, such as hail, dust storms, and tornadoes, have become more frequent, suddenly appearing in regions where they are atypical. This is a systemic process and not a series of coincidences. All these and many other anomalies are caused by the activity of the Siberian magma plume and the processes derived from its heating. Citizens of Russia, you yourselves have already seen that the repressions orchestrated by your authorities, together with Raciers and the FSB against Alatra, were not worth what has already happened and what is yet to come. These are your homes and your lives at stake. What lies ahead was foreseen and voiced by Alatra, the very Alatra they are trying to silence, just as they are trying to silence you, the Russian people. But the terror that is intensifying in your country will not help, because the climate situation will continue to deteriorate, and seismic activity will intensify in places where you least expect it. Your cities in Siberia are already crumbling, and they will continue to collapse, and you will be powerless to stop it. Unfortunately, your scientists, people like Vinogradov, are corrupt. They will not warn you in time. Yet, if you had heeded Alatra when you had the chance, none of this would have happened, nor would the disasters that await you in the near and distant future. And you will see and understand that Alatra was right in every word. Whether you wish it or not, you will be forced to replace the rotten people in power, to cast out Raciers, and to come to us in search of a solution to the climate and seismic crisis. Or there will be no or you will come. And you will topple the corrupt oligarchs and sweep away their cronies. Why? Because roughly 33 million children live in your territory. Sooner or later, concern for the lives of children will outweigh the fear of the terror Dvorkin has organized, as he imposes Nazism and builds a Fourth Reich in Russia. And this is indeed a Fourth Reich, Nazism that has defeated you. Look around. Will you say that Alatra is again needlessly raising the alarm? Your church has turned against Christ, breaking all his commandments. Your country's leadership talks about remembering how they defeated Nazism, yet in reality, you have already lost to it. What is happening in Russia now mirrors the early days of Nazism in Germany. And you remain silent in the same way the German citizens did when Nazism was being imposed on them. You have no free internet. You are stripped of your voice, and entire organizations and groups of people are being destroyed before your eyes. The country has been turned into a totalitarian state under the rigid rule of the Nazis, with constant propaganda that brainwashes the population. Do you not see this? Do you not know what to do? Perhaps you do not yet, but what will happen to Russia's climate? What will occur in the atmosphere and in seismic activity will force you back to common sense, whether you want it or not. When your children's lives are touched, you will find what to do, or you will accept a reality that will already be inevitable. I am not a prophet, I am a scientist, but remember my words. Whether you want it or not, Russians, you will have to stand against Nazism once again. Your church has betrayed Jesus. It has turned against his commandments. You have betrayed your grandfathers and submitted to the Nazi imposed on you by Dvorkin. And you see this. You see what is happening in the country. But soon, very soon, you will have your eyes opened. The crucial thing is that this awakening does not arrive tragically late and that we still have something to offer you. Whether you want it or not, you will have to, as your grandfathers once did, rise up against Nazism again, but this time on your own soil. I understand you will not rise for yourselves as you have already betrayed yourselves. But for your children, for their future, you will rise. The climate will compel you to, and scholars like Vinogradov will be of no help. Therefore, you will be obliged to turn to Alatra. But before that, you will rid your country of all Nazism. Otherwise, there will be no place for us in your country. That will happen far sooner than you can imagine. You will come to understand that, above all, the lives of your children are worth fighting for.